Hi, brothers and sisters and friends. It's wonderful to be with you today. Tom Holton is my name, and this is Latter-day Light on a Hill. And today I just want to talk about spiritual setbacks and the challenges that we face in our lives and what we do about them, what we can do about them, what we might do about them. So, about a year ago I started running properly, and I have covered a lot of distance in that time. About 900 kilometers, almost 900 kilometers of training. And it's not been without its challenges. It's required a lot of effort. And I was due to run a marathon this coming weekend, but I had an injury yesterday when I was running. Very mild injury, but sufficient to cause me to defer the running of the marathon. So instead of running it next weekend, I'll run it in September instead, and gives me some additional weeks to prepare, to be properly ready, to be fully ready, to be injury-free. And of course it's a disappointment, but it is a reality of life that we face disappointment, that we face setbacks, that we face opposition, that we face tribulation. There are many names we could put on it: trials, challenges, difficulties, opportunities. And how we conceptualize and think about these challenges, these situations, has a huge bearing on what we do about those situations, those circumstances. We can't always change our circumstances, but we do have a high degree of control over how we respond to difficulty and how we respond to setback. I've heard it said that our setbacks can either be a stepping stone or a stumbling block. That's food for thought. And as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I believe that this life is an educational experience. It is instructive. It teaches us so many things, this life, if we allow it to. There's so many things we learn in a lifetime. One of those things we learn is that situations often happen that we don't always appreciate, or we don't always desire, we don't always value, but that the situation itself can be instrumental in our growth and development. And that might seem like an ironic thing to say, or might seem strange. In the church, we talk a lot about the challenges and the difficulties and turning these to our benefit, turning these to a positive experience that we can learn from. And that's the experience I'm having at the moment with this injury. It's not pleasant to be injured. Thankfully, it's relatively mild. But always in preparing for something, a goal, a desire, a vision, something we want to achieve. There will always be setbacks of some nature, of some description. There will be some difficulties and obstacles. There will be situations that occur that make it challenging. And that's okay, that's perfectly appropriate. In the gospel, we're taught that these situations, these trials, these difficulties, these adversities can be for our benefit. They can be for our blessing. They can be for our opportunity. They don't have to be. They don't have to be a barrier to learning or to growth, to opportunity. We can learn. We can experience. And Joseph Smith, at one time when he was in the midst of his trials in jail, he was taught, all these things shall give thee experience and shall be for thy good. And the idea that the Lord can turn our difficulty into a learning ground, that a prison can become a temple, that we can emerge from an experience, a bitter experience, learning to value the sweet, that we can learn to contrast difficulty with sweetness, the bitter and the sweet, the good and the bad. and that these things can teach us. So what are we doing about our setbacks? What are we doing with our trials? And that's a question for each one of us to consider. I know here in Ireland, in the church, we have many things that we've learned, many things yet to experience. We are waiting for the announcement of the temple as to where it will be located and what it will look like potentially. And then, of course, the groundbreaking and the construction, and then the eventual dedication, the open house and dedication, and then, of course, the actual operation of the temple. We're waiting patiently. It'll be 2 years in October since President Nelson announced the temple. And the idea is that we sometimes have to be patient in waiting. That doesn't mean we don't do anything. It doesn't mean we're just passive, but that we are patiently waiting, but we're also actively preparing ourselves, learning what we need to learn, becoming the sort of people we need to become. In our lives, we can face a whole array, a vast array of challenges: health challenges, financial challenges, emotional challenges, spiritual challenges, challenges with relationships, and with all sorts of things that we might experience. And these are not intended to derail us, but are intended to educate us. They are intended to help us to become what it is we need to become. The gospel is a gospel of growth. It's a gospel of development. It's a gospel of progress. It's a gospel where we come up against difficulty, against hardship, and that can make us strong. One of the great things about the church is our pioneer legacy. We think about the pioneers and the difficulties they had to endure, not just the pioneers that crossed the plains, not just the pioneers in Nauvoo, but also the pioneers in each land, in each nation where the restored gospel has been planted, and where those pioneers, those early saints, members and missionaries and leaders, had to grow up unto the Lord, had to face difficulty and the inconvenience of a new way of life, misunderstandings on behalf of the community perhaps, and the difficulty of adjusting to a new way of thinking about God, a new way of thinking about the world, new expectations, because the gospel does require something of us, and that is both a challenge and an opportunity. And I really believe that greatness is born out of difficulty, that hardship can make us strong, that we are not called always to be comfortable. Life is not intended always to be convenient. It is intended to help us to grow, and we have this latent ability inside ourselves, but that latent ability needs to be called forth, needs to be called out of us, and that requires us facing difficult circumstances, unwanted situations, breached expectations, disappointments, sorrow and loss. It also requires us having wonderful experience, having joy, having peace, having triumph, having a sense of victory, making a contribution, serving others, growing beyond our comfort zone, achieving things that we didn't think were always possible, and coming to have a new belief, a new understanding about who we are and who other people are. So reinventing ourselves, as it were, through a gospel lens, coming to see ourselves as divine children of God, as children of the covenant, as disciples of Christ, as President Nelson put it, encapsulating those scriptural doctrines. So here in Ireland, we face challenges just like everywhere else in the church and in the world, and all people face challenges, whether they're members of the church or not. But in the church, we have that message that we are here for a reason, that we have a purpose, that there is a plan, that God is alive and active and involved in the affairs of men. And I sense that in my life, that God is actively involved, patiently waiting, but also seeking me out, coming to me, inviting me to prepare for his presence, his glory, his knowledge, and feeling that desire to become what I need to become, to emerge into a new creature, a new person, a new man, a new kind of person with a changed nature, a changed heart, a changed mind, a changed soul, a changed spirit. And so this difficulty, this injury that I've had this week, it's not a permanent injury, it's temporary. The setback is temporary, and the trial is temporary, but the success can be eternal. I will run this marathon now in September. And I've also deferred the original marathon I was going to run this weekend. I've deferred that till next year, so I'll get an opportunity to do another marathon next year. So I wasn't anticipating having two to do rather than one. But this is an opportunity, and life is about opportunity. And it's about recognizing those opportunities and seizing them. The opportunity to develop better relationships. The opportunity to learn intellectually. The opportunity to deepen our spiritual understanding, to grow in our relationship with God. The opportunity to prove that we can be obedient without being compelled, without being watched over constantly, but that we can choose to do good and to be good. Setbacks are not the end of the story, they are part of the narrative. But greatness is born in difficult trouble. And all the great stories in the history of the world are contingent upon there being opposition, upon there being difficulty, upon there being a challenge to be overcome, an obstacle to be faced and surmounted. Some sort of growth and development, some sort of becoming, some sort of emerging from darkness and coming into the light, some sort of growth from ignorance to knowledge, from confusion to certainty, from ignorance and innocence to a sense of maturity and understanding and comprehension and wisdom. And this is the advantage of experience, and especially difficult experience and brutal experience. And so I've been thinking a lot about that our trials, our challenges, our opportunities are a blessing, are a compliment from the Lord, that He trusts us enough to help us to grow, that we can seize that opportunity, not to give in to the temptation to recoil or to shrink or to draw back, but to lean in to our challenge. And that's much easier to say than to do. But I've been struck by that. And as I look around me, as I see all that goes on around me, in the world, in the church, in my own life, constant dealing with problems and dealing with difficulties, and that life is essentially a series of challenges to be faced and overcome and learned from, and grief and disappointment. These are things that are not permanent, but what can be permanent is the lessons we learn, the values we stand for, the experiences that shape us, the memories we hold dear, the people we come to love and to serve and to uplift, that we are serving, that we are sacrificing, that we are blessing others, that we are living for a cause, the greatest cause, God's cause, the celestial cause, the cause of Zion, the cause of the kingdom of heaven, the cause of Christ and the Father and the Holy Ghost, the cause of prophets and apostles and saints throughout the ages. So setbacks, difficulties, disappointments, hurdles, obstacles, all these things can be a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block, if we allow them to be. If we have a vision and a vantage point of where it is we're headed, that we're headed to eternal life, that we're headed to the kingdom of Almighty God. And that is not just a destination. It's a way of being. It's a way of living. It's a way of seeing. It's a metamorphosis in the very perception we have of life, the very conception we have of this world and this universe and this existence that we call life. That we're coming to be shaped according to God's principles, God's doctrines, God's law, His commandments, His opportunities, His blessings, His principles. These are the things that come to shape our beliefs and our behavior. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to walk and to run towards goals, towards achievements, and I mean that both literally and metaphorically. I mean, we all have a goal. We have a destination, I hope, in mind to reach upward, to move forward. And there will be setbacks. There will be disappointments. There will be injuries, if we like. But the Lord will always prepare a way for us to have another opportunity at something, if it is really expedient, if it's really good, if it's worthwhile. There are many opportunities, and some opportunities come but once, but some recur. And really, we're trying to position ourselves so that we're training, we're preparing. And so all the work I've done in running has contributed to my fitness, to my well-being, to my mental health, to my overall health. So it's not wasted. We sometimes get so fixated on a particular event or a particular goal that we want to achieve, and we don't always open up our minds to different ways of achieving it, or looking at it differently. But the Lord is training us to be prepared for those things which He would want us to achieve. And He will always prepare the way. He will help us to bless lives. And so it's been a great lesson. And we, as Latter-day Saints, as members of the Lord's Church, indeed as children of God everywhere, we have lessons to learn. We have obstacles to overcome. We have challenges to face and to surmount. We have things to learn. And these are the principles and the values that we learn: patience, forgiveness, long-suffering, courage, mercy, love, kindness, tenderness, long-suffering, humility, desire, faith, hope, charity, love, and I single to the glory of God, meekness, humility. All of these principles and values and qualities and attributes, that is what we are here to learn, and they are the eternal principles, eternal values, eternal qualities that can be brought about through struggle, through suffering, and through joy, and through the sunshine and the rain, through the bitter and the sweet, through the helpful and the hurtful. That all these things can give us experience. All these things can be for our good. All these things can bless us and benefit us, even if they are bitter at the time of going through them. But the Lord also prepares us for joy. Life isn't just about the bitter, it's about bitter and sweet. So we need both. We need to have joy, we need to have love, we need to have hope, we need to smile and be happy and sing and play and dance. And the gospel is a gospel of joy. It's not simply about hanging on in the midst of desperate circumstances. And sometimes it is doing that. Sometimes it's pushing through when life is hard. But other times it's about feeling the confidence, the assurance, the certitude that things will work out good and will work out well and will work out even better than we expected. I have faith that God will intervene in our lives for good. I know that in my own life He has done that consistently. And I know He will in our own lives. Perhaps not in the way we had envisaged, not always on the timetable we expect, but trials can make us great. Out of trouble and tragedy and terrible difficulty can come great triumph, can come great power, great understanding, great wisdom, great maturity, great progress in the things of the Lord. That's how we acquire this education that we've come here to this life to obtain. Setbacks don't have to be a stumbling block. They can be a stepping stone. I'd encourage all of us to keep ourselves focused on the eternal perspective, the eternal plan, that this life is a very important moment, but it is only a moment, and the eternities lie before us, and we will all die, and we will all go into the next life. We will continue to live, continue to grow and develop. And so let us learn the lessons we need to learn. Let us experience what we need to experience. Let us rejoice in the goodness of God. Let us remember that our difficulties are but for a season. They will pass, but our joys will last forever. Stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. Let's not be overcome by our trials, but let's overcome our challenges and our tribulations to the glory of God, to the blessing of His children, to the exaltation of the race. Brothers and sisters, good to be with you today. I hope that you have a beautiful day. I hope that you have a wonderful week. I hope that you will be inspired to know that your difficulties can be turned to the glory of God, to your own benefit, to be consecrated to the welfare and the everlasting salvation of your soul. That whatever difficulties you have experienced or will experience, that these can help to catapult you forward to become what is necessary for you to become, to qualify, to be the sort of person who can dwell in the celestial kingdom, the celestial heaven, to have all sin and iniquity burned out of us, and to become purified like fire, to become sanctified, to become holy, to become good, to become polished in the arms of the Almighty, to become his servants, purified, powerful, ready to do his will. That's my hope. That's my prayer. Greetings to you from Ireland. The kingdom is true. The church is the church of the Lamb. It is established. It will not falter. It will succeed in its mission. Zion is on the earth, and we are building Zion in preparation for the second coming of the Messiah. His second coming is close. We are closer to it than we have ever been in the history of the world. Now is the time to prepare, to be ready, to make ourselves in a position where we hear the voice of the Lord and act on his will, come what may, despite difficulty, despite setback, despite challenge, that we will follow his will, that we will run the marathon of life, the spiritual marathon, maybe not a physical one, but a spiritual marathon of life, to endure, to be faithful, to be loyal, to be true. That's my hope. That's my prayer. That's my wish. That's my invitation. May we go forward, and may we be blessed that our lives will be a stepping stone to greatness, not a stumbling block to defeat. May we go forward, reach upward, move onward, and have great joy in the journey. Have a wonderful day.